Hey everyone, hope you're doing well. This is Justin here. I am coming to you from Wichita Falls, Texas. Got the beautiful Wichita River in front of me and got this nice little bridge here. I'm currently exploring the trail system here in Wichita Falls. It's actually a loop that goes around the city, and they're currently working on it, but when they're done with it, then it should be about a 26-mile loop around the city. So it'll be marathon length. And yeah, you just got this nice paved trail here, you know, for walking, running, biking. We've actually got a mural over here, which is pretty cool, that I want to show you. But yeah, so in this video I want to talk about nomad life versus settled life. Before the pandemic, I was living a nomadic lifestyle, you know, the digital nomad lifestyle as the media calls it, where I was working online and just bouncing from country to country. Here's that mural that I was talking about. It's just on the side of this building here. You just got downtown Wichita Falls, and you've got the some cyclists. Cycling is really big in the city here. And then you've also got the falls on the right hand side there, which I actually passed the falls on this trail here, maybe about half a mile that way, or about a kilometer that way. But they weren't running. I was gonna try to get some B-roll footage of the falls, but I don't know why the falls aren't running. Perhaps they're cleaning them. So in the past, there were actually natural falls there, but they got destroyed somehow, and they just replaced it with artificial falls. But yeah, so back to the topic, nomad life versus settled life. I was traveling all over, you know, being a nomad. I spent time in a lot of different places, mainly Latin America, but I also spent time in Southeast Asia, South Asia, a little bit of time in Egypt. I spent a summer in Europe. I was in Brazil, Argentina, Chile, but I mainly spent time in Mexico and Colombia. But yeah, I was just bouncing all over the place, you know, working remotely from over 25 countries. And it was really great for that time in my life and that stage of my business development, because my business was getting up and going, but it's not like I was super busy. I actually had the bandwidth to, you know, do a little bit of work and gradually grow my business, but it wasn't so much work that I didn't have time to properly explore the various places that I was visiting. And then of course, the global pandemic hit and totally shook things up. I didn't have, since I was just traveling from country to country, I was just, you know, living on tourist visas, but like never overstaying a tourist visa. So I would go down to Mexico, you get a 6-month tourist visa there, and then go from Mexico to Colombia where you get a 3-month visa, which you can then extend to 6 months. And then I go over to Ecuador where you get another 3-month visa. So you just kind of string together those tourist visas to last for the entire year. And I'd only come back to the US for maximum 1 month a year. For tax reasons, among other things. Well, first of all, saves money by, I would save money by living in cheaper locations around the world, but also saving some money on taxes. So we got another bridge up here. I think they're doing like a photo shoot over there, so I don't want to get in their shot. I'll try to go fast. Oh. But yeah, overall these trails, it's a Saturday afternoon. There's not many people on the trails. Lots of people on the interstate back there though. It's kind of one of the sad things about being in Texas is people drive too much. Like all the cities are just designed for cars, and people don't get out and walk enough. So where was I? Yeah, so I was living abroad for most of the year for lower cost of living, lower taxes, so on and so forth. But I never had a residency in any of these countries because I was just, living on tourist visas, just stringing tourist visas together. And then when COVID hit, it got a lot harder to jump from country to country with all the travel restrictions in place. Many countries won't even let you come in, or you have to get you have to have a negative COVID test within 3 days of arrival, stuff like that. So it just became a lot trickier. And also, I was in Mexico at the time when I got news about how bad things were getting just all around the world, frankly. And I saw that there was the travel ban being put in place for Europe, and I decided, okay, I had probably better just go back home because who knows how long this is going to last. I just need some place that's stable, secure, where I can ride this out, and I don't have to worry about my immigration status. So I ended up coming back to the US. I mean, if you look at some of my previous videos, you can see that I've been a bit critical of the US, and I mean, I've been back here for 9 months now, so I definitely have a refreshed outlook on the country. And I'd say that my current outlook on the country is that if you're comparing the US to the vast majority of countries around the world, it's actually a pretty good place to live, with a few minor exceptions, a few minor complaints. Specifically, the healthcare situation in the US is just abysmal. One thing that I really don't like about the US is just the pressure to constantly be making money, and just the constant pressure of everybody. It just feels like everybody's trying to go through your wallet all the time. There's just advertisements all over the place, and it's a bit ironic because I work in digital advertising, but and like scam callers, and it just seems like there are scams left and right, and people preying on each other. It's like the Wild West out here. I mean, we do have laws and regulations, but people will do just about anything to nickel and dime you here, and there's too much of an emphasis on work and making money, and not enough of an emphasis on the other important aspects of life, like recreation and family and so on and so forth. But it's kind of a give and take scenario because due to that environment, this hyper capitalistic environment, you've actually got a scenario where business, it's a really good country for doing business. See, those are some cyclists. So like I was saying, it's a pretty big city for cyclists here. Oh, more cyclists. Yeah, so since you've got that environment, this hyper-capitalistic environment where everybody's trying to go through your wallet, it's a great place for, running ads, and it's a great place for, doing business. There's a huge market here. Well, the other thing to consider about the US is that I'd say if you were a wealthy individual, the US is one of the best countries to live in, for sure. But, well, from like a quality of life scenario, not necessarily, tax scenario, obviously. But, I think that, if we're talking about just the average person, average person in the US is, I'd say, a lot better off than, say, the average person in, India, or the average person in Egypt, as someone that has, traveled and been to a lot of various developing countries and spent a pretty good amount of time in various developing countries. Whereas if you're talking about the US and you're saying, let's compare the average citizen of, say, Norway, or the average citizen of the Netherlands, with the average citizen of the US, I'd say that these other developed countries are beating the US on almost every metric, with maybe the exception of, the US is better in terms of a business environment. But these other developed countries are doing a better job in terms of education, in terms of healthcare. And for me, I'd rather be in a place where you kind of got a nice balance of, we're reasonably good with education, we're reasonably good with healthcare, and we're reasonably good with business. See, the US is just like all in on business, and that's at the expense of the healthcare, and that's at the expense of the education. We're commodifying the healthcare and commodifying the education, which if you're rich, it's really not that big of a deal. But if you're just the average person, it can start to weigh you down. And I'd say that, my outlook on the US is, I do think it has gotten more positive over time, but I think that's my own internal bias of I'm getting wealthier myself, and so I'm more inclined to enjoy being in the US because I'm more financially sound, right? It's not necessarily like the US has gotten better, it's that I have gotten better in financial terms, and that makes me perceive the US as being a better place, whether it really is or not. So hopefully I'm, expressing myself in a way that makes sense there. But so I've been back in the US for about 9 months now, and I have more or less just been living a normal, settled life. And I just kind of want to talk a little bit about the pros and the cons of, nomad life and settled life. With nomad life, it's great in the sense that, you have just so much variety, and you just get all this new external stimuli, on a day-to-day or week-to-week, month-to-month basis. But it can be really hard to actually, maximize your productivity in that scenario because you don't have a home base, and you're constantly jumping around from place to place. And every time you jump around from place to place, you're hitting reset, and you've got to, reestablish yourself. You've got to find, a place to do laundry. You've got to get a new place to live. You've got to, find, maybe you have to find new office space, whatever it may be. Like all those things, those little things, they add up, and they eat away at your ability to be productive. And so obviously I recently bought a house here in Wichita Falls, and so now I have a proper home base, and it's just amazing. I've got, a great desktop computer. I've got a nice mechanical keyboard. I've got, reliable, stable, fast internet every single day. Like all these things allow me to be more productive. And one of the things that I liken it to is there's actually a book called Guns, Germs, and Steel by Jared Diamond. I believe that book won the Pulitzer Prize. But in that book, Jared Diamond, he explains how basically the premise of the book is why did the Europeans conquer the Americas as opposed to the people like the Native Americans conquering Europe. And one of the things that it boils down to is that it was actually Eurasia was better suited for developing agriculture, in the sense that, with the Americas, it's north to south. So there's a lot of different climates as you're going north to south, whereas Eurasia is really wide. So you're going east to west, and the climate doesn't change as much going east to west. And that fostered trade, and it was easier for agriculture to develop. There were some other things, like there were some inherent species that were easier to domesticate over in Eurasia. But once you develop agriculture, then you've got the farmers that are growing the crops, and you get to a point where not everybody has to be a hunter-gatherer and spend all of their time, all of their effort just feeding themselves. you get to a point where one farmer can produce enough food for 50 people or 100 people, and then those other people can spend all of their time learning science or making inventions. And that's ultimately what kickstarts civilization. So Eurasia was just inherently in a better position for that, for a variety of reasons. Getting agriculture up and going, and then getting civilization up and going. And the thing is, whenever you're able to, you go from being that nomadic hunter-gatherer to being someone that just lives in a city and you just have your own home base, you're able to just absolutely maximize your productivity and skyrocket your productivity. And so I'd say it's it's similar for people these days, in the sense that if you're nomadic, you really, a lot of your bandwidth just gets tied up and just meeting your needs on a day-to-day basis. Whereas if you've got a stable home base, you've already kind of got everything figured out, everything on lockdown, and it's just a matter of spending all of your time focusing on your work and making more money. And so there's various pros and cons to nomad life and settled life. At this point, we're all pretty much on lockdown with COVID. COVID has essentially made the decision for us. Do we want to be nomadic or do we want to be settled down? Well, if you want to be safe these days, you pretty much have to be settled down. But I think that if I had to choose, what is best for me, I really feel like it's a mix of both the nomadic lifestyle and the settled lifestyle, because I'm a person that really does crave that regular that regular change of environmental stimuli. I get really bored really fast if I'm in one place for too long. So you can imagine how these past 9 months have been, where I'm more or less just stuck in one house. But I think that really there's a happy medium to be had, where you spend a good chunk of your time settled and you're working on your business, getting your life squared away, getting your finances squared away. But then you also have these periods of being nomadic, where you get to just basically enjoy the fruits of your labor during that time when you were settled. And again, it's not like a zero-sum game where you can't do any work while you're traveling. It's just you gotta acknowledge that your bandwidth is going to be limited. And so in terms of what I'm gonna do whenever the world starts opening back up again, I'm not so sure. It really just kind of depends on how things are going with my business. If I feel like, I also feel like it's just good to trust your gut with these things, where if your gut is telling you, ooh, I'm really busy with business right now, I need to maximize my bandwidth and be settled somewhere, then go with that. But if you're going, hey, I could really use a trip right now, even if it's just 2 weeks or a month or 3 months, whatever it may be, I could really just, I need to go somewhere different and just kind of get a fresh perspective on things, then you can go with that. So yeah, I mean, that pretty much goes over the highlights of my thoughts on this topic. Hopefully it wasn't too boring for you. But I think that with all this being said, I'm gonna sign off from Wichita Falls here at the Wichita River. Take care.